Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver, and the NBA playoffs are getting as crazy as ever. We got one Game 7 tomorrow night, and after tonight, we could have as many as 2 Game 7s on Sunday. So it has been a wild postseason, probably the weirdest I've ever seen. That includes last year when it was in a freaking bubble in Disney World. This is the craziest one I've seen in regards to injuries, in regards to the upsets, in regards to who's showed up and who hasn't showed up. I'll get into Brooklyn and Milwaukee in just a second here. But before I get into anything sports related, just want to wish all the dads out there a happy Father's Day. Obviously, is this weekend. So hope everybody out there enjoys the weekend with their dad. Shout out to my dad as well. So happy Father's Day to all the amazing fathers out there. Shout out to every single one of y'all. We got a great show, though. Going to discuss both Game 6s tonight. First, the Atlanta Hawks have an opportunity to upset the Philadelphia 76ers tonight in the ATL at State Farm Arena. Trae Young has an opportunity to do his thing yet again and get the Hawks back to the conference finals for the first time since 2015. You also got the Clippers with an opportunity to make their first Western Conference Finals ever against the Utah Jazz. The banged-up Utah Jazz against the equally banged-up LA Clippers. Get into that later on in the show. And also, the Dallas Mavericks are now in search of a new head coach. Didn't have time to get into it yesterday. I'll get into it on today's show. So, ton to discuss. And, of course, I'm going to start with Brooklyn and Milwaukee Game 6, a game which the Bucks did not trail from start to finish. My reaction is this is what the Bucks were supposed to do. This is what they were supposed to do. Every home team has won the series. Every home team this series has won at home thus far and has not won on the road. Brooklyn took the first 2 at home. Milwaukee took the next 2 at home. Brooklyn won Game 5. Milwaukee won last night. Of course, Game 7 is going to be in Brooklyn, and the Nets are going to win. They're going to win Game 7. Okay, first of all, James Harden, we all know he was awful in Game 5. Now, you could blame a lot of that on the whole hamstring issue and he coming back too early. I get it, but he was awful in Game 5. 1 for 10 from the field, only gave it 5 points. That's terrible. But last night, it still wasn't James Harden. Still clearly not 100%, but gave you 16 on 5 for 9 for the field, 3 for 6 from three-point range, 7 assists. That's not bad. It's better than Game 5. So you expect he'll be even better in Game 7. Now, KD got his 32 because that's what he does. Like I said, it don't matter how hard it is, KD's going to get his 30. And by the way, he shot over 50% for the field, 15, or not over 50%, right at 50% at 15 for 30 and gave you 11 rebounds. That's what he does. He's the greatest scorer on earth. He's the best player on earth. Blake Griffin gave you 12, but outside that, no one else for the Nets really showed up. On Milwaukee's side, that's the best game in Chris Middleton's playoff career. Without a doubt. I mean, you're talking about a guy that shot 11 for 16, 5 for 8 from 3, 10 rebounds, and a total of 38 points. You'll take that from Chris Middleton, and I don't expect him to do that in Game 7. I just don't. He's shown an ability to struggle on the road. He did a little bit in Game 5, although he had the nice pass to Giannis. Nice nifty pass there in the paint from 2 feet out to Giannis, an opportunity to tie it, and it went right through the 2-time MVP's hands. That 2-time MVP gave you 30, 12 for 20 for the field, 17 rebounds, and had the exclamation dunk with about 4 minutes and change left. So, this is what the Bucks were supposed to do. They were at home, coming off a tough Game 5. You got to win or go home. KD has got to be exhausted from an entire 48-minute game in which he played every second of. James Harden obviously still not 100% healthy. There's no Kyrie Irving. You had to take care of business at home. And to their credit, they did. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. But Game 7, as Bill Russell said, the great Bill Russell said, the best 2 words in sports are Game 7. What do you know about Game 7s in NBA history? Especially, first-round Game 7s, they're all right. But we all know the playoffs really start, like the contenders, it really starts second round on. Second round conference finals, and obviously the NBA finals. As I have a comment from my man Barry Grant Jr. of the Olive Podcast. Check out his show. He says, Bucks in 7, and I was just about to get into that. I was just about to get into that, Barry. Here's what we know about the Bucks. Middleton struggles on the road in the playoffs. Look at his numbers. At Toronto in 2019, look at his numbers in this series. In Brooklyn, he struggled badly. Okay, we all know, we've discussed it, Barry. We all know about Giannis. The biggest games, when you need him. I'm not talking about last night. Of course, you had to win last night. But come on, man. You're at home. KD is exhausted from a 48-minute game. James Harden's still not 100%. Kyrie is out. You better win Game 6, or, man, who knows what was going to happen. We knew Bud was going to get fired. And I don't know what was going to happen in Milwaukee if the Bucks had choked that one down. But they didn't. They did what they were supposed to do. I do not expect that in Game 7 at all. Middleton's not good on the road in the playoffs. We all know Giannis, when the moment gets the biggest, when the lights shine the brightest, who do we know that shows up? KD. Now, does Harden? No. We all know Harden, and I've discussed it at length on this show, his playoff struggles. But he's the 2 now. He's the 2. And plus, if you tell me in Game 7, James Harden's going to give you 21 points and 8 assists, 5 rebounds, I will absolutely take that. On half a hamstring, I'll take that from James Harden. 21 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds. You'll take that. KD's going to have to give you about 35. But we all know the role players in Brooklyn are obviously, as any role player on any team is, more comfortable at home. Joe Harris is going to be ready. Blake Griffin's going to be ready. Claxton, James, all those guys in Brooklyn are going to be ready to go for Game 7. So I look at this list, Drew Holiday gave you 21, but 1 for 10 from the three-point line. He was taking some bad shots. And this is a home game, too. He was taking some awful shots. As I have another comment from Barry. He says, I agree 100%. There are question marks on both sides. Coaching experience. Middleton struggles. Giannis shrinks. Only person to trust is KD. But that may not be enough. Well, in Game 7, obviously you need help. I talked about KD's incredible performance in Game 5. I mean, is the greatest performance of his career, in my opinion. But he needed help from somebody. Who was that somebody? It was Jeff Green with 27 off the bench, 7 for 8 from three-point range. That was his help. Somebody's going to have to step up for Brooklyn. Whether it's James Harden, I don't know if at his health he's capable of doing that right now. Is it Blake Griffin? Is it Jeff Green again? Okay, so somebody else is going to have to step up, and I think at home they're very capable of doing that. And so even if you say KD's the only one you trust in Brooklyn, well, who do you trust in Milwaukee? You don't trust Giannis. You don't trust Middleton or Holiday. I mean, now we're getting into role players. PJ Tucker, Brook Lopez, Brent Forbes. We're getting into role players now. So I think when it comes down to it, Game 7 is about which superstar shows up. It's always been that way. We know KD shows up in these big moments. He's got 2 rings, got 2 finals MVPs. He's shown an ability that when it comes down to it, he's going to go down swinging. If he goes down, he's going to go down swinging. And I still, for the life of me, I know Giannis took KD in the fourth quarter, and maybe that's the strategy they'll throw out there for Game 7. To kind of keep Giannis as fresh as possible for the first 3 quarters, and then put him on KD in the fourth quarter of Game 7. But for the life of me, why are they not doubling him? I mean, I'm watching that whole game, and I'm thinking, why on earth is Milwaukee not double-teaming Kevin Durant? I don't get it. Again, he's going to get his 30. He's going to do that. He's the greatest, in my view, the greatest offensive player ever. The greatest pure scorer ever. He's going to get his 30. But you want to make it as tough as you can. And to Milwaukee's credit, PJ Tucker, he did that. He did that in Game 4. He did that in Game 6. But that's at home. You're going to get calls at home, right? Now, the refs are obviously going to step back as much as possible in Game 7. They want the players to decide this thing. We always say, you always know if an official's a good official if they're not the story. If they're not the story after the game, they did a good job. And that's what the officials, I'm sure they're going to get a great crew to officiate Game 7. They're going to step back. They're going to let the players decide this thing. That's what they're going to do. I'm going to take Brooklyn to win tomorrow. As I said, I'll throw out a score. How about, listen, game sevens are hard fought. It's going to be a defensive battle. We all know Brooklyn, when they put the effort in, and we all know they will for a win or go home game tomorrow night, they have the ability to be a good, certainly not a great, but a good defensive team. I'm going to take the Nets to win 105-97. Nets win 105-97, advance to the Eastern Conference Finals, and take on either Atlanta or Philadelphia. This has been a great series. I said it would go 7 before the series began, and it obviously is going the distance. And, I'm looking forward to it. I got the Nets winning 105-97. Game 7, by the way, tips off 8:30 Eastern on TNT. Vegas likes Brooklyn. They don't love Brooklyn. They favor them today. Now, the line could obviously change by tip-off, but they like Brooklyn -1. So they're certainly very much giving Milwaukee a shot to win this game. Certainly wouldn't bet anything on either team going into Game 7, but who I am betting on is KD. There's nobody else on the floor for either team that I can bet on to show up. Nobody, except for Kevin Durant. So I think ultimately that's what it's going to come down to. You know he's going to show up. Can anybody else show up for Brooklyn? There's no way Kyrie's playing. I told you Kyrie is done for the series after seeing how severe that ankle injury was. And then on the side of Milwaukee, they've been in a lot of these games the last few years, and they've shrank. Game 5 is their opportunity. They had a 17-point lead and couldn't close it out. So I think the psychological edge favors Brooklyn slightly, and I'm going to take the Nets to win this game, go to the Eastern Conference Finals, and take on either Philadelphia or Atlanta. Speaking of Philadelphia and Atlanta, let me talk about that one. Game 6 is tonight at 7:30 Eastern. I believe it's on ESPN. Is it on ESPN? I think that's where it is tonight. Sixers, Hawks. Yeah, ESPN tonight. And Vegas actually likes Philly on the road, -3, despite blowing 2 double-digit leads in the last 2 games. You see it in the title of this show if you're watching it live, or even if you're listening to the podcast. This is a franchise-defining game for Philadelphia. Now, why is that? Because over the course of an NBA career, whether it's playing or coaching, as is the case with any profession, you build a reputation. Philadelphia, the individual players, they built a reputation. Joel Embiid, what's his reputation? When he's healthy, he's the best big man in the league. But sometimes he's not healthy. And right now, he's not, right? He's got the knee issue. And some of his reputation is sometimes he don't love the physicality, at least in the second half of these games. He don't like the physicality of going down low, which doesn't make sense because when he does go down low, nobody can stop him. Is it that he's out of shape? Maybe that's the case. But he's clearly hurt right now, and he's had a history of getting hurt. But with Embiid, you could say he's got the desire, he's got the work ethic. Injuries are just his issue. That's his issue. You look at Doc Rivers, the head coach. Now, I'm hearing some people say, listen, if they lose tonight, Doc Rivers may get fired. I don't think he will. Only because if you're Philadelphia, who's the upgrade at head coach? Like, at least with the Clippers, when they fired Doc Rivers, at the very least, they had Ty Lue. Ty Lue's a championship-winning coach. Like, they had him on the staff. Does Philadelphia, please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if they have a good heir to the throne, if you will, if Doc gets fired. As I have a comment here about Doc Rivers from Barry, he says, the scariest horror movie I've ever seen is Doc Rivers in a Game 7. It's scary, and it usually ends poorly. I can think of 4, just off the top of my head, 4 Game 7s that Doc Rivers has lost. Back in Orlando, I can't remember what year that was. Then he was with the Clippers. He had 3 Game 7 losses. 2015, second round against Houston. 2017, first round against Utah. And then 2020, second round against the Denver Nuggets. So he has a bad history, as this next comment says. He's a disaster in elimination games. He is. He's a complete disaster in elimination games. It's the inability to make adjustments. So, I mean, he's been thoroughly outcoached by Nick McMillan in this series. His reputation, what's Doc's? He's a really good coach. He's a really good regular season coach. He's got a ring on his finger. He's a championship coach. Nobody can take that away from him. But when it comes down to it, When he's up in series, when he's got big leads in games, big games of series, his teams can't close it out. That's his reputation. Let's just look at last year. They got a 3-1 lead in the Denver Nuggets, and the Lakers, by the way, also had a 3-1 lead against the Houston Rockets in the same conference. So we were thinking, okay, Lakers, Clippers, Western Conference Finals, here we go. It's the battle for LA. What did the Lakers do? They obliterated Houston in Game 5, advanced to the conference finals, where they go, okay, Clippers are next, and they lose Game 5 after holding a 16-point lead. And so it's like, okay, sucks. No harm, no foul, though. We can close them out in Game 6. And you had a 19-point lead in Game 6, and you lost. So now palms are getting sweaty. You're starting to feel the pressure a little bit. And Game 7 comes, you hold a 12-point lead early, and you lose by double digits. And that's all she wrote. Clippers choked the 3-1 lead down. I think it's the worst choke in a 7-game series I've ever seen, considering that they had a double-digit lead in all 3 of the final 3 games and lost all 3. So that's what Doc Rivers is in the playoffs. So it's elimination game tonight. Can he show up? Ben Simmons, what do we know about him? It isn't just that he doesn't show up. It's that he is outwardly terrified of the moment. He is outwardly terrified of the free throw line. He does not want the ball in his hands. Why? The Hawks are just going to foul him and send him to the free throw line for him to go 0 for 2. The other night, he went 4 for 14. I threw out the stat on yesterday's show that Ben Simmons has missed more free throws this playoffs than the entire Atlanta Hawks team. Think about that. One guy has missed more free throws than an entire team this playoff run. That's bad. And what do we also know about Ben Simmons? He doesn't take jump shots. And he's kind of got this. I threw out this comparison. A guy DM'd me the other day after Game 5. He said, and I thought this is the perfect comparison. He said, Ben Simmons is the Jay Cutler of the NBA. Why is that? Well, both incredibly talented. Both basically prodigies coming out of college. They don't care, though. They both have this blasé, whatever kind of situation, kind of mentality. Jay Cutler, minor injury in the NFC Championship game against the Green Bay Packers, oldest rivalry in the NFL, chance to go to the Super Bowl, and he's on the training bike. And poor Caleb Haney had to try and get it done for the Bears, and he barely came up short. Ben Simmons, they have to take him out of the game in the last couple of minutes because they can't trust him. And he's an offensive liability. As we have another comment from Barry. What is more of a possibility? Simmons gets traded or Embiid asks for a trade? I don't think Embiid will ask for a trade because I think what Joel Embiid knows, obviously, the city of Philadelphia, it is a tough city on its superstars. But I think what he realizes is, hey, this is a well-run organization. This is a general manager in Daryl Morey who will do anything to put his team in the championship picture. That's why I think they're going to trade Ben Simmons. I think what's more of a possibility, short answer, Simmons getting traded because he's an offensive liability. I saw this. I don't know if I screenshot it. No, it didn't look like I did. But there was this retweet from 2017, Ben Simmons' rookie year, about a month and a half into his rookie year. And apparently the Sixers had just played a game where they were playing hack of Simmons. They were intentionally fouling Simmons so he could go to the free throw line because they knew he was going to, best case scenario, go 1 for 2. And they were asking about that. He said, don't worry, this won't be a problem in the future. 3.5 years later, it's still a very big problem for the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. A team which many thought was Brooklyn's biggest threat in the Eastern Conference. Chance to go to the NBA Finals. Chance to win their first title in 40 years. Embiid's problem is injuries. That's his issue. Simmons just don't care. His body language says it. His face says it. His game says it. You don't care. That's why I think you have to trade Simmons. You can get a nice package for him if you do trade him. But if you want to win a championship, if you're the 76ers, You got to trade Ben Simmons. And if there's an upgrade over Doc Rivers, okay. But I don't think that's as big of a problem as Ben Simmons at all. So I think Simmons is going to get traded. I think it's way more likely than Embiid asking for a trade. I think there's no chance Joel Embiid asks for a trade out of Philadelphia. We've seen crazy things like that happen, but I just can't see it happening. But this is a franchise-defining game. This is an opportunity for those three guys in Philadelphia to right the old wrongs of the past. Doc Rivers in his career has, in the last 25 years, he's blown 11 games, playoff games, in which he's had a double-digit lead. No other coach in the last quarter century has gotten into the double digits. This is what Doc does in elimination games or in big games where he has big leads. Ben Simmons, he's scared of the moment. That's what he does. This is a big game. He can't be scared of the moment. This is do or die, win or go home, on the road. And Joel Embiid, he's got to stay healthy, and he's got to have the gas to win this game in the fourth quarter. Because I highly doubt this will be a blowout either way. I don't see Atlanta blowing Philadelphia out, and I can't see Philadelphia blowing Atlanta out. Let's keep in mind, Philadelphia did have an 18-point lead on the road in Atlanta in Game 4, and they were up by darn near 30 2 nights ago. They did something right to build those big leads. It's the inability to close that was the big problem. They got to outscore 40-19 in the fourth quarter in Game 5. That's unacceptable. They had two guys on the entire team that hit a shot in the second half, Joel Embiid and Seth Curry. So it's about those three: Doc Rivers, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons. Point blank. You say Tobias Harris, and I say, yeah, Tobias got to show up. But I don't think if they lose this game, people are going to go straight to Tobias Harris. I just don't see that happening. They're not going to go to Seth Curry or any of the other guys in Philadelphia, Korkmaz or Thibault. They're not going to go to those guys. It's those three. It's the head coach and your two best players. They got to show up tonight. And they got to show up if they win tonight. They got to show up in Game 7 because they're supposed to win this series. They're the better team. You got to show up. So, I'm looking forward to watching it. I feel like there is a slight amount of pressure on Atlanta. They are at home. Now it's like, okay, the ATL is going to be rocking. State Farm Arena is going to be rocking. This is probably their best chance to close out the series because Philadelphia, of course, again, it is a road game, and they've blown back-to-back large fourth-quarter leads. Lot of pressure on the Hawks as well, but none more than Philadelphia and specifically their head coach and their two best players. Looking forward to seeing how it plays out tonight. They got an opportunity to right the old wrongs of what they've done in their career to this point. They've got an opportunity to, I guess you could say, do what their reputation says, to not do what their reputation normally says they do. Looking forward to Game 6 tonight. Now, another Game 6 tonight, the second Game 6. This is a real interesting one. You got the Los Angeles Clippers with a chance to make their first Western Conference Finals in franchise history. Now, they had an opportunity to do that 3 times in 2015 and lost all 3 games, 5 through 7. And then last year, they had an opportunity to do that 3 times and lost games 5 through 7. Tonight, it's really weird. So they come off a big road win. They're at home. There's no Kawhi, obviously. It's already. I mean, it's not like this is a shocking report or anything, but Woj has come out and said Kawhi's out. Kawhi has told teammates he's done for the series, most likely. You got Utah, where Donovan Mitchell, their best player, is a game-time decision. I'm pretty confident he'll play because of the circumstances of tonight. And Mike Conley, it's looking more likely than not that he will play his first game of the series, which is huge for Utah. Absolutely huge. Having their 2 starting guards, albeit not 100% healthy, giving them an opportunity to win tonight. But it's funny with the Clippers, you don't know what you're getting tonight. You don't. For all Clipper Nation, all 14 of them, it must be really tough to watch this team on a nightly basis, especially in the playoffs. You don't know what you're getting. Game 5, nobody thought the Clippers had a prayer's chance of winning. Their best player, who's been arguably the best player of the playoffs, is out. You're on the road in the loudest home court left in the postseason. You got your best player now, Paul George, has a history of choking in big games. There's no way you're going to win. And they survived a 10 made threes first quarter by the Jazz and got the win, and Paul George dropped 37. Now, different pressure tonight. Paul George is the guy again. So now we saw him do that in game 5. We saw it with our own eyes. We watched the game. I was like, okay, Paul George showed up. He's got to do it again, though. He's got to do it again. Whether it's tonight, whether it's game 7, I think he would sure like to do that tonight because, listen, if he comes up small tonight and the Jazz win, he's going to be hearing those Pandemic P chants in Utah. He's going to be, hearing, someone called him playoff PU, way off P instead of playoff P. Like, he's going to be hearing that stuff. And we all know that stuff can kind of get in Paul George's head at times. Whereas Kawhi, total opposite. So what's interesting is 2 other guys came along for the ride with PG in game 5. It was Marcus Morris, who was huge, and Reggie Jackson, who's been great this entire playoffs for the Clippers. But Utah does get Mike Conley back more likely than not. We know they've been solid in elimination games, especially on the road. They haven't won at Staples Centers yet this playoffs. They lost game 3 and 4 big. I think the Jazz win tonight. I honestly don't feel that confident about it. I actually kind of like the Clippers tonight, but I'm going to go with my gut. I say Paul George drops 23. I think he comes up, I wouldn't say small, but smaller than he did in game 5. I say Paul George drops 23, grabs 9 rebounds, 3 assists, and the Jazz, with Donovan Mitchell, with Mike Conley, win a close one. I'm going to go 103-101. 103-101. The Jazz survive, force a game 7 back home on Sunday. And then there'll be a lot of pressure on Paul George, playoff P, and the LA Clippers on Sunday. Because this will be the 3rd time in the last 7 postseason runs that they'll have an opportunity to advance to the conference finals. They couldn't do it 3 times back in 2015. They couldn't do it 3 times last year. If they win tonight, as I guess sad as it sounds, this will be the biggest win in Clippers history. They've never gotten this far in the playoffs. They've never gotten to the conference finals. Again, as sad as that is, this would be the biggest win in Clippers postseason history, and it would be the biggest game of Paul George's career, without a question. If he shows up tonight and the Clippers win, we might want to remove that Pandemic P tag from him, because with all the pressure, your best player's gone, like just out of the blue, gone for the entire series. You're on the road in game 5 and you show up and drop 37. And then in a game 6 at home with the pressure of, the NBA on your shoulders, like, okay, let's see you do it again, and get a cursed franchise to their first Western Conference Finals. You're the guy, not Kawhi. You're the guy. And you show up tonight. We really don't have a choice. All the meme pages and all the fans like myself that has seen this from Paul George constantly, him show up or not show up in the playoffs, I think we'll have to not only remove Pandemic P, we might have to attach playoff P and actually this be for real. This would actually be serious and attach playoff P to his name. But we'll see what we'll see. I'm looking forward to tonight. We got 2, just great game 6s. We got a game 7 tomorrow night. The playoffs have just been wild. They've been crazy. The injuries and you got the Suns. How about the Suns? They sweep the Denver Nuggets. Everybody's feeling good. We get a week off, and then Chris Paul's out with COVID. Can't explain it. Can't explain it. Talked about LeBron yesterday and what he said about it, and he's definitely got some strong points. So looking forward to seeing how tonight plays out and how these next couple of nights play out. I think we'll get at least 1 game 7. I actually predict we'll get 2. I got the Jazz winning on the road, and I got the Sixers winning on the road, and we'll have 2 game 7s on Sunday, and we'll have 1 tomorrow night, Brooklyn and Milwaukee. It's going to be fun. That's all I do know. It's going to be fun. And there's definitely pressure on the Jazz. Shout out to my man, James Scott of the Across the Pond Sports Podcast. He's a diehard Jazz fan. I got the Jazz winning tonight. I don't feel good about it at all. I don't know. Something feels different about the Clippers this year, but maybe I'm overreacting. I'll take the Jazz tonight, and depending on what happens, we'll see what happens in Game 7. Monday's going to be a crazy show. Crazy show. Let's talk about the Dallas Mavericks for a second. Rick Carlisle's out. He didn't get fired. You know, we a lot of times we see these mutually agree. I think this was the case in Portland with Terry Stotts. Terry Stotts and the Trailblazers mutually agreed to part ways. No, he got fired. That's the nice professional way of saying Terry Stotts got fired or this person got fired. This is a different case, though, with Rick Carlisle. He said, he put out a statement. He said, on my terms. Rick Carlisle has 2 years left on his had 2 years left on his coaching deal with Dallas. And he said, on my terms, I'm stepping away. And also in that statement, he said, I look forward to new coaching opportunities. So he's not retiring. He's actively seeking a new head coach job. I think he'd be a great fit in Boston. I would love to see Rick Carlisle go to Boston and coach those two young superstars. Well, I wouldn't say Jaylen Brown's a superstar. I'd say Jason Tatum is. But you got two young star players in Tatum and Brown. Of course, the Celtics just traded Kemba Walker today for Al Horford. Al Horford's back with the Celtics. So we'll see how that plays out and what they do in the draft and free agency with now Brad Stevens running the helm, which I like quite a bit more than Danny Ainge, because Danny Ainge was just petrified just to make any sort of aggressive move in the trade market and in free agency. So I think the Celtics are in good hands. So I'd love to see Rick Carlisle go there. But as far as the Dallas Mavericks, this has been a really weird 72 hours with them. So you got Luka Doncic a week ago doing his exit interview, and a reporter, because Luka is up for an extension. He's got an opportunity to sign a big deal to stay with the Dallas Mavericks long term. And a reporter asked him, they said, are you signing the Supermax? And he kind of smiled. He said, I think you know the answer. So we're thinking, okay, all right, Luka's staying in Dallas. We kind of all expected that. And now all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is really interesting. So Donnie Nelson, the longtime general manager of the Mavericks, who apparently, according to multiple reports, Luka really liked Donnie Nelson, they fired him. And Rick Carlisle, out of the blue, steps away. So now they're looking for a GM and a head coach, which is weird considering you have a young superstar player. Keep in mind, Luka Doncic is a superstar at age 22. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. He's got a long career and an opportunity to be one of the best scorers we've ever seen. And so you now have Dirk Nowitzki, the greatest Maverick of all time, stepping into, I believe, an advisory role with the Mavericks. So he's in the building now. I'm real interested to see what Mark Cuban does. Who's the next head coach? Because obviously what you're doing, you want to bring a general manager in to get Luka help, and you want to bring in a head coach that can further develop Luka's game. So these are big hires that the Mavericks are going to make this offseason, that Mark Cuban is going to make this offseason. As of a comment from Barry, he says, Carlisle wanted no parts of the dysfunction over there. The micromanagement from Cuban and the tsunami of an ego battle with Luka, he was not going to deal with it any longer. Good for him. I think there's a lot of truth to that. It seemed like he and Luka didn't always get along at times. He and Mark Cuban definitely didn't get along at times. So listen, you're absolutely right. That's what the reports are saying, that this was kind of an issue with the entire Mavs organization. We even had a game, I think it was against the Knicks. The Mavericks were playing a game against the Knicks this year, and Rick Carlisle didn't coach. And it was one of their assistants, I can't remember the guy's name, but Luka sang his praises after the game. He said, this guy could be a head coach. Is that the guy that the Mavs go with? I don't know. But, I don't remember. Let me just give an example. Just as a Warriors fan, I remember the 2017 playoffs. The Warriors were the number 1 seed, the prohibitive favorite to win the title. Okay, they in the first round, they're playing the Portland Trailblazers. They win the first 2 games, and then all of a sudden, we find out Steve Kerr is going to be out indefinitely because he's dealing with more of his back issues. Steve Kerr doesn't coach another game until game 2 of the NBA Finals, so another almost 2 months. So Mike Brown steps in, a former head coach, now an assistant. He's still with Golden State. I heard the players in Golden State obviously giving him a lot of credit as he deserved, but never did I hear anybody with the Warriors say anything that could be perceived as a shot at Steve Kerr. What Luka said about the Mavs assistant was a little bit of a shot at Rick Carlisle. That's what it was. So I think personally, I think the hiring of the next general manager is much bigger, than the head coach, because they need to get Porzingis out of there. I don't know how they're going to do it. He's on a massive deal. He was straight garbage in their second round series against the Clippers. He was terrible. It was Luka against the Clippers. That's what it was. And so I think who they hire as a general manager, listen, Dallas is a big market. They've won a championship. They have actually won a playoff series since that championship in 2011. And so they had a superstar in Dirk, who was drafted in, I believe, 1998, and they didn't win a championship until 13 years later. That's normally not how it goes with superstars, because look at the Bulls with Michael Jordan. He was drafted in 1983, and obviously the Bulls were just a dysfunctional mess. They were called the traveling cocaine circus, for crying out loud. They were a train wreck. But over the coming years, okay, they hired, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting his name. The old head coach there, I don't know. Man, I'm blanking. I always blank on this guy's name. He was a former coach with the Chicago Bulls. He ended up being a broadcaster later on. He actually coached Michael Jordan in Washington, but he was there. Bulls won some playoff series. Then they go get Scottie Pippen in the draft, and then they go get Phil Jackson. And so Jordan was drafted in 83. The first championship came in 91. The first of the six came in 1991. So Barry said Doug Collins. Thank you, Doug Collins. Doug Collins, really good coach. They won playoff series. In the process, they got Scottie Pippen, but there was, still didn't have that coach that could get you over the top. And so they fire Doug, they hire Phil, and the rest, as they say, is history. The Bulls won 6 championships in 8 years, and Jordan won 6 finals MVPs. But Jordan got drafted in 83, won the chip in 91. So there's an 8-year gap in between when he was drafted and when they won their first championship. With Dirk, it was 13 years. It was over a decade later that they won a championship. And he had Steve Nash. This is Phoenix Suns Stephen Nash, but he was a good point guard in Dallas. Right? They had some decent players. They were the number 1 seed one year back in 2007 and lost to my We Believe Warriors. That was the year Dirk was the MVP too. And so they had a transcendent player, one of the greatest players ever, and only got 1 championship, and it took him 13 years after he was drafted to get it. And after that, they didn't win a single playoff series. After the 2011 NBA Finals, this is just crazy. Dirk Nowitzki never won another playoff series. So they got to make sure they're able to get the help around Luka in order to win. I think listen, don't get me wrong. The hiring of the head coach is big. It's big. But I feel like the hiring of the general manager, there's also been reports Luka has a big problem. He's gotten into some arguments with the analytics guy in Dallas, who Mark Cuban loves, and nobody else in the building does the way Mark does. And so there's that dynamic. Does he stay around? So it all comes down to what Mark Cuban does. He's got a superstar. I mean, Dirk said last week, he was walking up to the Staples Center. I think it was for game 2 of the series. Might be game 5. It was one of the games in LA at the Staples. And some guy with a cell phone camera is following Dirk. And he asked Dirk, he said, "Is Luka better than you?" He said, "Oh yeah. Oh yeah." Now, Dirk's a humble guy, but he said it without hesitation. He didn't give like a PC answer he said, "Oh yeah, he's better than me." And he is. Like, Luka at 22 is better than Dirk at 22. He's more skilled than Dirk at 22. It's up to Dallas. It's up, at the end of the day, to Mark Cuban. You've got a superstar, a young superstar, who's got a lot of great years left in him. A lot of great years. Probably a good 10 to 12 years. You got to make sure you hire the right general manager who can surround him with the adequate talent in order to compete for a championship. And you got to get the coach who can press all the right buttons, who interacts with the players, the way you need to. Now, Luka does deserve some blame. I can't put all the blame on Rick Carlisle or Donnie Nelson. Luka does deserve some blame because in Game 7, he wasn't perfect. Obviously he had a good stat line, but in the second half, it was kind of quiet, and he got some buckets there toward the end that made his stat line look a little better. And so, is that a matter of wearing down? I don't know. Is it a problem is it that Luka is difficult to coach? That we'll probably find out in the next year or so. Because if the next head coach comes in and Luka has problems with him, it's probably a Luka problem, not a coach problem. Because listen, Rick Carlisle is as good of a coach as you'll find in this league. When there were rumors that he could be fired after they lost to the Clippers, after the Mavericks lost to the Clippers, I scoffed at them on the show. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. With what he was working with, you're going to fire him? With what he was working with in Dallas, they got the 5 seed and took the Clippers, a better team, 7 games. Like, you're going to fire that guy? Excuse me. You're going to fire him. Well, he stepped away. He didn't get fired. He stepped away. And according to him, he's actively seeking a head coaching job, and I think Boston would be the perfect fit. But I'm interested to see what the Dallas Mavericks do going forward. They're in a real interesting scenario. Luka hasn't signed that extension yet. I think he has until right before the season starts to sign it. But it all comes down to, as far as decisions, as far as being able to put the right people in charge, it obviously comes down to the owner, as always. And as far as being able to handle the pressures of being a superstar, obviously that comes down to the superstar himself, Luka Doncic. As Barry says, Luka has a tendency to think he knows more than everyone. I'm sensing this. This can be a bad environment for any second star or coach. Very well could be right. And like I said, that is something, maybe not with the second star. Can they get that second star this year? Do they go out and get Damian Lillard? That's a possibility. Do they go out and get another star player? Time will tell. That all comes down to the general manager, whoever they hire. But we'll find out in the next year or two if it's a Luka attitude problem. If it's his problem that he doesn't interact well with coaches and teammates. Very well could be the case. Very well could be the case. So I'm really, really, really interested to see how this plays out. Then you got the whole Zion Williamson thing in New Orleans. I think Zion's gone. I thought Zion was gone from New Orleans before he got to New Orleans. I'm like, there's no way he's spending his whole career in a city where the NFL team's more popular than the basketball team, than the NBA team. And the college football team, LSU, is more popular than the basketball team, and for good reason. Both for good reason. Like, that's a football city, New Orleans is. And it's a party city. Like, basketball's an afterthought in New Orleans. It just is. And so, when you got one of the young stars in the game, I'd call Zion Williamson a superstar personally. When you consider what he's done in just really a year and a half. He didn't play in his rookie year till January. So really a year and a half in the NBA. He's putting up numbers comparable to LeBron in his rookie year, his first 2 years. So, the Pelicans are in a very interesting spot because you've got Zion. You fired 2 head coaches in 2 years. Your best player, Anthony Davis, left, and J.J. Redick bashed the organization after he got traded. The J.J. Redick thing, I'll repeat what I said yesterday, the story. First of all, J.J. and Zion were very close. Like J.J. the veteran, Zion the rookie, or the young player, at least this year. They were very close. And the reports came out from The Athletic that J.J. Redick knew he was going to get traded by New Orleans. And like I said, it's like an unwritten rule. It's one of the rare good unwritten rules in sports. Like if you have a veteran, not just the NBA, but in sports, if you have a veteran player, if you're not a great team, you're not going to make a championship run, you have a veteran on your team that could contribute to another team's championship run, you give him the respect and you trade him to a contender. You say, thank you for your services, rooting for you. Hopefully you go, get yourself a ring, and hopefully we can get a good package in return. J.J. Redick went to the organization because he knew he was going to get traded. He said, listen, could you trade me to Brooklyn so I could be closer to my family? That was his wish. He wanted to be closer to his family. They traded him to Dallas. Like, if you're not going to trade him, if you're not able to trade him to Brooklyn, put him on waivers and let the Nets claim him. That's what you got to do. And JJ was just furious. He bashed the organization after it was over, and so people in the Chris Paul wanted out of New Orleans. He forced his way out of New Orleans. So the situation with the Pelicans, it isn't exactly unfamiliar territory for them. Where you have JJ Redick's not a star, but Chris Paul, superstar. Anthony Davis, superstar. Zion Williamson, if he's not a superstar, he's darn close. I mean, he's 21 years old. He's already got his first signature shoe. And you look at the numbers he's been putting up, he's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Not on the defensive end whatsoever. He's got to work on that. But offensively, he's as good as they come in the league. So I think he's gone out of New Orleans, especially we saw after that loss that the Pelicans had to the Knicks earlier this season in April. It was a game the Pelicans had a big lead, as is normally the case with the Pelicans the last couple of years. They got a big lead, and they're just not able to hold on to it. And they lose in heartbreaking fashion. And after the game, and this isn't, Zion's a very, energetic, big personality, likes to show it on the court, right? But you don't normally see him after losses like all smiles. After that game against the Knicks, he was a big smile on his face. The Garden was great, and the fans in the Garden were amazing. And man, the Knicks are just they're what's up. It's like, dude, you just lost to them, and you're with the Pelicans. Zion wanted to go to New York all along. I mean, we remember back in 2019, the draft lottery, when the Knicks didn't get the number 1 pick, and Zion didn't look too thrilled. And by the way, his family doesn't want him in New Orleans, so that has a whole different dynamic to it. So it's like the star doesn't want him to be there, and the star's family doesn't want him to be there. So that all but indicates I think he'll play in New Orleans this year. I think he's got one more year left in New Orleans, and after that, whether it's by trade, whatever, he's gone. He's not going to be a New Orleans Pelican long term. I think he wants to go to the Knicks. Certainly. How about this? How about the Los Angeles Lakers? Barry says Zion's rep should have pulled Steve Francis on draft night. Yeah, they should have. Or an Eli Manning, or John Elway, just basically stepping back and saying, "I'm not playing here." There were rumors, possibly Joe Burrow could do that last year with the Cincinnati Bengals, but that was really never going to happen. But yeah, I agree that once it was down to New Orleans and Memphis. By the way, in Memphis, look at that team they put together. Like, I've went out on a limb that I think the Grizzlies are going to be the 4th seed in the West next year. I think they're going to have home court in the first round next year. Seeing what they've done these last 2 years with the young talent, Taylor Jenkins is an excellent head coach. Grizzlies do absolutely have a bright future. And maybe in the next 3 to 4 years or 5 years, maybe they're a championship contender. They've got young talent. They've had just a little taste of success in big games in obviously in the play-in tournament this year. And for what it's worth, they won game 1 against the Jazz in the first round this year. So they've had just a little taste of success. I think they're building something. But back to Zion, it's a classic case of the superstar players like, man, I can't win here long term. Like, I'm with Jordan Brand. I and Luka, we're the biggest NBA basketball players currently at Jordan Brand. Like, and I'm stuck in New Orleans, which frankly, basketball's an afterthought. Like, it just is. So I think he's gone after this year, and we'll see what happens from there. By the way, let's just think about the Los Angeles Lakers. What if they go get Zion? Like, what if, you think about the Lakers, and listen, with Lakers fans, it drives me crazy. They anytime somebody's on the market, they think they're going to get him. Like, you see these memes of who the Lakers think they're going to get. And it's like LeBron, AD, Steph, Giannis, Chris Paul. I mean, they think they're going to get everybody. But that is actually a scenario. Like, they're not getting Damian Lillard. They're not getting Steph Curry. But this is a scenario I could actually see happening next year, because by that point, LeBron will have completed year 19, right? 37 years old, not in his prime anymore. Good. Great. Just not in his prime anymore. AD, we all know he can't lead a franchise. He showed us that in New Orleans. He showed us that at times this year when LeBron was out with injury. Maybe the Lakers have a package. Maybe they make another deal with the Pelicans that involves sending Zion Williamson to the City of Angels. So that I could actually see that happening. And I hope it doesn't happen because I'm a Warriors fan, and maybe we get him. Heck, maybe we get him. You know what? We got 2 first round. If Minnesota's, if in the draft lottery Minnesota doesn't land in the top 3, we have 2 lottery picks. We have some assets we could trade. Why not? Why not go get Zion Williamson? But for these championship contending teams that have assets and draft picks, Zion Williamson could be out there. Just saying. So that's a really interesting story to follow. So with that, that is all the time we have for tonight's show. Thank you all so much for watching on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. If you've been listening to Carving Up Podcast, we appreciate that as well on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, and Anchor. Obviously, the show going to be on Monday is going to be crazy. We'll have a conference finals in the West. We'll have a conference finals in the East. Regardless of what happens tonight, we got a Game 7 tomorrow night. We could have as many as 2 on Sunday. Tonight's games are going to be crazy. I got both road teams winning. I got Philadelphia winning in Atlanta, and I got Utah surviving. It's going to be close in Los Angeles to force a Game 7 there, and then we'll see what we'll see. We could have 3 Game 7s over the weekend. If we just have 1, I'm happy. But if we have 3, man, that'll be awesome. But it's going to be a crazy show on Monday. As always, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right where you're watching this show. The podcast episodes are available at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific time. So happy Father's Day. Have a great weekend. God bless you all. Peace out.